Hey, what's up and welcome to Q&A, the show where I take your questions from YouTube and Twitter and answer them here in video format. We got a bunch of questions. Just want to jump in and get into them today. So we're going to start with a question from my guy, Jackson Bolin. Jackson Bolin with the question. And what does he say? Well, Jackson says this. He says, despite it being an obvious need, how many people speculate the Browns won't spend a second round defensive tackle because it seems AB doesn't value the position? Thoughts on this take? I think we have learned that we don't know what AB values, right? He might have not invested a lot in a defensive tackle before because he just didn't value who was available at these spots in the drafts in previous years, right? He's not really been in a spot where there has been a premium defensive tackle at a reasonable round selection like there's going to be this year. So that might end up being a factor that could change things, right? We saw this happen with JOK where, hey, JOK fell to the second round. All of a sudden, the value proposition for JOK became overwhelming to the point to where he ignored what position he played and just went and got the player, right? So sometimes that can change things. Look, I don't think Andrew Berry values a position, a football position. I'm not talking like kicker, punter, or special teams or anything like that. But I don't think he values a position more than he values a good football player at the end of the day. And if you're a good football player, which there are a lot of defensive tackles who are good football players, and you're available at a reasonable selection for him where the value proposition seems correct, he will take you, right? I think that's the lesson to be learned over 2 years of Andrew Berry, is that these things are not hard, fast rules. He's not stringent to this ideology. It's just a guideline that he likes to follow, but sometimes guidelines have to go in between the lines. All right. Next question comes from Chris Broom, who said, Chris Broom, my fault, bruh, who says, we have seen two polarizing seasons with Stefanski, one where he won a playoff game and him taking coach of the year, and the other was a massive disappointment that resulted in a quarterback blow up. Which season is the best indicator of the real Stefanski? How important is the third season? Look, man, I've been on record. I think a lot of last year was just awful quarterback play. And I don't think there is some things that a coach can do to help bad quarterback play, but Kevin Stefanski did all of it, right? We complained about the heavy packages, but he did the heavy packages to make sure that Baker had time on the off when he threw, or that they could run the ball more often. He did those things. When that became something Baker was complaining about behind the scenes and Baker wanted to sling it out more, okay, he went to some empty and it didn't work. Like, there's only so much you could do when your quarterback's playing as per QBR, the 27th worst in the NFL. I don't think that's a fair year to evaluate him. If he comes out and stinks this year, then maybe that 2021 was more indicative than I thought. If he comes out and he's excellent in 2022 with Deshaun Watson, then the coach of the year was probably the real year with him. We'll find out this year which one was the true test for him. This next question comes from W. Mike, who says, what's up, Q? My question is, what is the scariest move a division rival could make in free agency going forward? And would Baker on the Steelers fit that narrative as somebody who would be happy with a QB upgrade? Baker going to the Steelers would be the last team I want to see him go with. Please. If Baker went to the Steelers, first of all, he has to beat out Mitchell Trubisky. I don't think that's 100% a guarantee. Two, we know what Baker, here's the thing with Baker. If you know Baker well, you can play against Baker well, right? And the Browns, they know him well. They practice against him well. They've intercepted him a ton in practice. They know what he is susceptible to. They know what he can and cannot do. I am not worried. I would be ecstatic if Baker Mayfield went there, not because I think he's some trash quarterback, but he's a quarterback that we know well enough to beat, right? Because he was on the team for 4 years and we have had to cater to his weaknesses. Now, what move can a division rival do? If the Ravens get serious about their wide receiving room, get worried, dog. Get worried about that. If the Ravens get serious about their offensive line, get worried about that, right? Like, the Ravens are the team that nobody's talking about that I feel like we should be worried about a little bit more. I understand they were in last place this year, but they got a former MVP at quarterback. They have Two good running backs coming off of ACL injury, so we'll see where that goes. The offensive line was a mess last year, so we'll see where that goes. But we know that defense is going to be good. In that wide receiving room, look, it could be up or down. But if it's up and they have the MVP level quarterback, then man, that's trouble, right? The next question comes from Soul Train, who says, with Denzel Ward extended, Greg Newsome on the second year of his rookie deal, and other corners like Troy Hill and AJ Green with the draft approaching, is Greedy expendable? Would you package him for a defensive lineman? It depends on which defensive lineman you could package him for. I'm not going to package him for some rotational guy because ultimately I think Greedy does add value in depth because Greg and Denzel both miss games last year. So I think you would want him there for depth. And he's also a guy you could put out there in certain dime packages. Like, he still has value on this team, and I don't think he's absolutely expendable at all. I think he's somebody you still have a strong use for. I mean, we'll see him come into use during this season. So, no, I wouldn't package him for just any defensive lineman. Like, if you wanted to offer me a starter for Greedy Williams, sure. But other than that, I'm not going to be really interested in trading Greedy because, one, I want that depth in that depth in the defensive back room. But two, I think Greedy adds value as a depth piece. You know what I mean? Just as a player himself, right? Not just as a reserve. The next question comes from Jacob, who says, we know AB likes to draft with the eye to the future. If Clowney is re-signed for 1 to 2 years, could David OJABO be a target to redshirt his rookie year, then replace Clowney? It was viewed as a top 20 pick before the injury, I believe. Now, he tore his Achilles. This is kind of similar to the Grant Delpit situation, but dissimilar in the fact that Grant Delpit did not get injured until after he was drafted, right? And he slid to the second round to the Browns. This is a player who got injured during his pro day. He was considered a pretty high pick before that. And yeah, it's a tough one. The Browns are in that situation where, hey, if they bring back Jadeveon Clowney, they can have OJABO be a red shirt and they can eat that risk there, knowing that they're investing in the first round pick. And for a team that's not going to have first round picks for the next 3 years, maybe if a first round talent gets to you, it might make sense to stash that dude so you can continue replenishing first round talent without having first round picks. So yeah, I think that will make sense. If he slides to you at 44, I think you definitely consider it. Look, he could play. Well, he's not playing. Never mind. He's not playing this year. But yeah, he could play, maybe in the mid to late parts of next season, not this upcoming season, but next season. So you're talking about a guy who's probably going to miss about 20 games in his career just off the bat. But at 44, the value proposition is right and they value him at that point, then yeah, you do it, right? You have that luxury. So that's what the Browns having a deep roster full of veterans and young players on the rise affords them, is the luxury to be able to take a chance on a guy like David OJABO. All right, the next question comes from Doomsday Prophet, who says, if Kyler Murray is out on the Cardinals, as some rumors are indicating, who do they become the best landing spot for Baker? We could eat half his guarantee and send him there for a third or fourth. Cards can flip Kyler and everybody else in that scenario. Here's the one problem with that. I understand that they have gotten over their differences, right? But Cliff Kingsbury has given up on Baker Mayfield before, right? Like he's the dude who benched Baker Mayfield for Davis Webb. After Baker was like freshman of the year in the Big 12 or something like that. So knowing that that's the case and knowing that that's the relationship and knowing that that's where Cliff has been at with Baker's skill set, that he just doesn't think it's enough. I don't think Cliff Kingsbury is the type of guy who would bet his future on Baker Mayfield or on a Baker Mayfield trade. I just don't think that's how Cliff would roll. I don't think Cliff is interested in coaching Baker Mayfield again. And I don't think that will happen. Now, if it does, hey, good on them. I think it's a perfect match for all the reasons that I make them Cliff Kingsbury jokes for. But yeah, I just don't see that one happening. I don't think that the Cardinals are going to be silly enough to trade Kyler Murray because, one, at this point, you can't even get that much for Kyler Murray because everybody who's wanted a quarterback has traded for one. Or at least sign one for this year. So like the level of investment people are going to have for Kyler Murray is not going to be as high as you would want. And two, you don't really got to just get the boy his money. You know what I mean? Like that's all you got to do. I understand people don't think he has earned it yet, but it's either you keep Kyler Murray or you run the field. And Kyler Murray is good enough to where I don't think you want to run the field, right? The next question is Zachary, who says, hey, what do you think about the USFL and other spring leagues? Playoffs are being played in Canton. If nothing else, it might be fun to check out live. Yeah, that'd be cool. I don't know when the playoffs are happening. But yeah, I like the spring football leagues. And I know some people don't like the spring football leagues just because, the football is not like the NFL quality. But like, let's be real. If it's a close football game in the fourth quarter could be played by eighth graders and you still gonna watch it, right? Like at the end of the day, the level of skill in athletic competitions is not as important as a competitive game. And the USFL offers a competitive league. It's an interesting league. They do a lot of interesting stuff. The presentation is not as good as the XFL. I think the XFL was the best presentation for a spring league I had ever seen. I used to watch weekends worth of XFL games. The USFL is not as good at presentation. They have not nailed certain things down. I think the XFL was much, much, much better in attendance. Now the USFL is having all of their games in one area for budgetary reasons, which works out for the Birmingham team, but does not work out for every other team. Again, it makes it a less appealing product to watch on television compared to what the XFL looked like in the early parts of 2020. But yeah, man, I'm all for spring football. I'm all for young players being able to get a chance to catch on. The more major football we could play in this country in the spring, I'm always for. I think they're always positives. The next question comes from Praise the Sun, who says, hey, what's going on, Q? How dramatically do you think the Browns offense will change with Watson at the helm? Will we still be a run-first offense, or will we change into something completely different? I think we'll morph. We'll morph during the year. There will be some games where Deshaun Watson will throw the ball 50 times and we'll win. There'll be some games where, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt dominate the offensive yardage game plan and we'll win, right? The Browns are going to be able to morph their game plan versus who they play. Their identity, I think, is always going to be, hey, look, if we get up, we're going to run this thing down and kill it. And that might or might not frustrate us because, again, when you have Deshaun Watson, you kind of want him to be the one to end the games. But I think at the end of the day, it'll change on a week-to-week basis because the Browns have that luxury. Now, with Baker Mayfield in there, you knew that you could have him win in the passing game versus certain teams that play certain styles, but you didn't necessarily have the confidence that you could go in and win with the throwing against any team in the NFL. Now that you have that confidence that you can win running the football against anybody and you can win throwing the football against anybody, then all of a sudden now, you feel a lot more confident about your ability to win. But that's my thoughts on your guys' questions. Again, guys, thank you for asking these questions. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.